previous sessions or last class, whatever it is, any questions, please let me know before we proceed to the next topic. So if you have any questions, please let me know on any of the topics so far. Alright, so the next topic that we'll be looking at is manipulating the XML data and real-time jobs. So in the previous session, we completed the management consoles, and once the management console is done, so real-time jobs, manipulating the XML data, and how do you handle the real-time jobs, web services and all. So as a part of this real-time jobs, so the things that we'll be looking at are, first one, how to handle XML data. We saw a sample of that with the help of query transformation. Next one is XML map and XML pipeline transformations. So we will look further into much details of this one because this will be helpful. So to tell you frankly, this is how I learned how to handle the iDocs, because initially when I started working on the project, so initially we worked for small and medium enterprises where iDocs was out of scope. So extensively I searched for this XML data and how to handle that. So these are the two documents that I got from that I downloaded from internet from SAP. I'll share them with you guys. So these two documents talk a lot about how to handle the XML data, what are the nested schemas, and how do you harness that, and different steps, like all possible actions that you can do with XML data. We'll see that. And apart from that, the second one, how to set up your system to handle real-time jobs. So before you even start creating a real-time job, you should set up your system so that your system can support the real-time jobs and services. Then next one, how to create a real-time job. Then how to create a WSDL web service using data services, or how do we convert a real-time job to WSDL, and that is like provoking a WSDL out of data services, and how to invoke WSDL using data services. So these are the steps that we'll be learning as a part of this one. First one, how to handle the XML data. Then what are the different types in which you can manipulate the XML data. And the second one is, how do you enable your system to handle the real-time jobs, or what are the different areas that you need to make sure that you cross-check and enable for your real-time jobs to be supported by data services. And how to create a real-time job, and how to test a real-time job. What is the difference between testing a real-time job and running a real-time job? How do you convert a real-time job to a web service, and how do you expose a web service using data services? And how do you invoke a WSDL. So these are the different things that we'll be learning. So let me open the first document, which is manipulating the XML data. So this is downloaded from Service Marketplace, and there are some supplement files that are given, because flat files you can go ahead and create, but creating some XML source and target files is really tough. So some supplement files are created, right, and they downloaded them here, so you can see these files. Right. So before we proceed with this one, I want to give you a few points on XML. So if in any project, so if you have an XML source, right, and the customer says I have a .xml file that you need to uh, read using data services, right? So can we do that? The answer is no. We cannot directly read a .xml file from a system. So to connect an XML file to your data services, we need either a .xsd XML standard definition or .dtd, which is data type definition. So these are the structure files, right? So first we need to connect a structure file to data services, and from that structure file you can point to the data file. So when we deal with XML data, so two things that we need to keep in mind is not only the data file, which is .xml, we also need the structure file, which is .xsd or .dtt, data type definition. So we need to ask the customer for .xsd or .dtd, so that first we can connect these files .xsd and .dtd to our system, and then we can process this thing, right? So that is first point. Second point, so when I create a job, if it is a bad job, and I pull in my .xml file, right, into my, or .xsd into my data services job and to my data flow, so it will give me four options, right? So if it is a bad job, or a bad job or real-time job, if I pull my XML file into my data flow, it will ask me if it wants to make as a file source or target. And the next one is, do I want to make it as a message source or target? So it will ask me, do I want to make it as a file source or a file target, or a message source or a message target. So if you are working on a bad job, right, so it is your file source and file target, and if you are working on a real-time job, it is a message source or a message target. So remember, these are the few things that you need to keep in mind. First one is you should have .xsd or .dtt, and the second one is if you are using a XML file in a bad job, then it should be a file source and a file target, because the bad jobs understands only the files, and real-time jobs understands only the messages. Alright, so let us start with this document. So I'll share them with you. You have few fundamental things about XML and stuff. You can read it here. We'll directly proceed with examples or jobs here. So, So the first example that we'll be looking at is how do I unnest the XML data and put it in a flat structure. We already saw that when we saw that using XML pipe, XML, the other one is XML pipeline and a query transformation. We saw that, but let's redo that one. Okay, let me add these jobs in this project folder called project real-time jobs. So I'm calling this is a bad job, not a real-time job yet. So job underscore read XML1, because I guess we already or read XML, right? We don't have the job name. Then create a data flow and call it as df underscore read XML. Now next step is to add your XML file to data services. So to do that, you can either go to your project, new, and go to XML schema. So remember, you can either go to your XML schema or a DTT schema here. So you can go to this one, or you go to your local object library in the formats tab, select your XML schema or DTT and right click in new, or you just right click in this white area, new, and go for an XML or DTT schema. So in the next service pack of this data services, you will see you will not see here like DTTs and XML schemas. You'll see something like nested schemas, right? So that is updated to nested schemas, and you select that nested schema, right click, and you go for new. There you will see DTT XML, and you also will see something additional called as JSON. So what is JSON? JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, right? So it is JavaScript Object Notation, right? So this is a very fresh add-on to data services. So JSON is nothing but the shortest way in representing the XML code. So XML code, if you just know the fundamentals of XML code, or go to any web page, right? So let us go to any web page, and right. So you go to the view and look at the view source code. So you will see some XML data, right? So if you look at the XML data, this XML data will have the markup language. So it starts with markups and ends with this one. So this is our XML data, right? So this is also called as the tags. So these are the tags, but JSON is further advanced version of XML data, which will be very simple, right? So it will be like this, and the entire data will be there. So less number of markups, and it will be pretty easy to understand. So even data services can read JSON files. Right, so to add an XML file, select the XML schema, right click and go for new, and you will get this import XML schema format window, where you need to just first, next to the file name or URL, you can either give a URL here or you can give a file name. Right, just click on browse, and here you see these files are XML schema files, the structure files, the XSDs. So you select the XSD postcode address and click on open, and namespace leave it, root element is the top parent node, the top parent node of this one, which is postcode address. So when we get these XML files from the customers, right, or from the data owners, we need to ask them for what? First one is my XSD, and the second question you should know is how many levels are there within this XML structure, and the third one is what is your root element. So once you give the file path and the root element, just click on OK, and it says the file name is empty. You have to give some file name. So I'm giving the file name as postal code. Right, so my postal code address file is available here. Now select this postal code address file and drag and drop it into your data flow, and you get this 4 options. Either you want to make it as a file source, a file target, or a message source and a message target. So since you are in a batch job, you need to make it as a file source or a file target. In our current scenario, this is my file source, so I make it as my file source. So one more additional rule. So once you add the XSD to your data flow, it is just a structure file. So from this structure file, you need to go and point your data file. So this is my nested structure. It has the postal code and its relevant addresses, and you have a drop down here right next to the XML files. You need to select the XML file and select this one. So now if you look at the extension, it is .xml. So just click on open, go back, and then now you'll see a magnifying glass. Click on the magnifying glass, double click on the parent node, and you will see the postal code and the 2 postal codes, SA019TB and D150LQ. So double click on SA019TB and you see the 3 addresses relevant to that one, and D150LQ, the 2 addresses relevant to that one. Now use a query transformation, unnest, call it as unnest, and connect it with your source XML file, and create a template table, call it as XML data, and put it in the target data store and click on OK and connect it with your query transformation. Now open your query transformation, and we cannot do a column level select here, so we have to do a schema level select. So select the schema postcode group, drag and drop it, and select that one and make it current. So the reason why I make it current is if I make a node current, right, the other nodes will be grayed out, so that I can work only on this segment. So these 2 segments are grayed out now. So select this postcode group, make it current, point number 1. And point number 2, if I make a segment current, so, and if I do something here, just some rule if I apply here, and if I go to the other segment and make it current, I will not see it there, which means all these tabs of my query transformation are separate for this segment and this segment. Right, to any segment they are different. So each segment has a different set of, or this query transformation acts like a different query transformation for this, different query transformation for this. You can also notice this from here. So if you go to this one and make it current, you'll see the data getting populated from here. Or if you select this, right click and make it current, you see the data is getting populated from some other nested structure. So what we need to do, we need to break this or unnest this one. So go to the postcode group, right click and make it current. And to break this nested structure, you select the schema and select right click and select unnest. Now you see an enter symbol here, which is this segment is removed and it is pushed to one step ahead. Then go to the subsegment, make it current. Unnest this one, just go back. Now if you just look at the table structure, it is now a flat structure. So it has an iterated, nested structure which we converted to a flat structure by unnesting the schemas. Now you go and select the job and execute it. And once the job is done, we'll be able to see the data from the nested structure converted into a flat structure. So now the job is successfully done. You go to your data flow and click on the magnifying glass and you see the data converted into a flat structure. So for the first postal code SA019TB, we have three addresses, flat 1, flat 2 and flat 3, and the second postal code D150LQ, we have either Eaton Hall and Garden Cottages. So if you want to cross check that with your source data, so click on the magnifying glass on the source file and double click on the postcode group, you will see the postal codes. So double click on the first postal code, you have three addresses. Double click on the second postal code, you have two addresses. Alright, so this is how we flatten the nested structure to a database table structure or to a flat structure. So that is our example 1. So this is the expected data that we got just now. So let us go and look at the second scenario, which is splitting the XML data, right? So what they want to do is, so if you look at the current data, we have two columns. One is the postal code and the second one is the address, right? One is your postal code and second one is your address. So the second example is, how can you split an XML file into two files and write that into a flat structure? Alright, so next one is job underscore split XML. So data flow underscore split XML. Use the same file, make it as your file source. Step number 1 and 2. Point it to your data file. Alright, so let me also tell you one more thing. Why, if I click on a drop down, I see global variables, is like you can also go and create a script here, right? And at the job level, create a global variable by clicking on the variables button and $GB underscore path, which is varchar 200, right? So you created a global variable, and now go to your script and give $GB underscore path is equal to this one, right? So I assigned the path of my XML file to a global variable, and now go to your file, give the global variable, just go back, and you can start running your job. So at the time of runtime, once you run your job, this script will map this path to this global variable, and then this file here, the global variable will be matched and it will get the data from there. So you can do it that way as well, or you can, if you have an access, you know. So the only reason why we will use the global variables to define the path is like if in a job you are using more number of source files and creating more number of target files, and so let us say if my job has 20 uh, target files that I'm creating and 10 source files that I'm using in it, and once my development is done, I have to go and run it on a production system or on a development system or in a mock environment. So I need to change the path of these 30 files, right? So instead of doing that, I can create two global variables. One is inbound and define my inbound directory path to it, and the second one is outbound and define my outbound directory path to it. And I use these global variables across the job. And when I have to change the paths from dev inbound to QA inbound, I can directly go and do that within my script. So I can directly change my path here from dev inbound to QA inbound and from QA inbound to prod inbound. So it will be very simple rather than going to each and every flat file, select that one, edit that, then change the path here and just click on save and close, delete that from the data flow and drag the new file there. So this is a hectic process. So if we are using more number of files, go with the global variables. So before splitting that to two different flat structures, there's one more example that I want to do here or show here is how do you combine different flat structures and write it into an XML data. So I want to add one ID here so that I can join them in the future. So add ID, select the postcode group, drag and drop it to the schema out, right click and make it current, and select this one, right click and create a new output column and give the column name as postcode ID, integer, and populate that with generate row number function. So steps I did, I dragged this to the schema out, I made this current, and at the same level equal to the postal code, I created a new output column called postcode ID and populated that with a row number. So what will be the value for this one? So for the first postal code SA019TB, it will be 1, and for the second postal code D150LQ, it will be 2. So that is the reason you should create that with the same level, right, at the postcode level. Now, as we are going to split this one, I call this as guest postcode, connect it to this one, open the postal code, so I cannot directly drag and drop it here. So what I will do, at this level, I will make this one current and I will unnest this one so that I can directly drag the postal code here. Right, so it is unnested, the nested structure is gone. So I dragged my postcode and also my ID, as I have to join these two in the future. The second one is get underscore address, connect it with my previous query transformation, open this get address, then address you cannot drag because it is already there at the nested structure, so drag the parent schema, make it current and unnest this one. So it is a nested structure, you are unnesting that, so you'll have only the address there and the postcode ID. So now go and create two template tables. The first one is demo underscore postal code, and the second one is demo underscore address. Connect them to their respective query transforms. And validate this data flow to see if there are any errors. No errors found. Now go and run this job XML split. So job is successfully done. You go to your data flow and look at the data in the demo postal code. So it has SS019TB and D150LQ, the two postal codes that we have, and their row numbers 1 and 2. So this is what we created with the postcode ID. And I also dragged the same postcode ID into my demo address table. So let us see how it behaves there. So for the first three addresses, or for the addresses that belong to the postal code, so it has the postcode ID as 1, right? And for the two addresses, it has the postcode ID as 2. Because if you look at this one here, when I added an ID, I added at the parent level, so that for a first child, or to the parents that belong to the first the children that belong to the first postal code, the three addresses, it will get postcode ID as 1, and the addresses that belong to the second postal code will get the postcode ID as 2. So that is the reason why I created that at the parent level. So that is split XML. And the third scenario that we'll be looking at is how do you read the data from a flat structure and write it into an XML file, and how do you populate an additional segment of an XML file. So that is the next scenario here. How do you write data into an XML file? Alright, so this is the one that we'll be looking at right now. So the next assignment is to read the data from a database table and write it into an XML file. And how do you handle this? So let us go and add our target XML file to data services. So go to the format SAP, select the XML schemas, right click new, click on browse, and this is our target XML file, the postcode address too. So click on OK, and then the same root element, give the file name as postcode address too, and click on OK, and it is added. Now create a job, write XML, create a data flow, now within this data flow, drag and drop this and make it as a file target. Since we are in a batch job, so make sure we make it as a file target. So now for this one, if it is a source file, we'll go and say, okay, from here read this one. But if it is a target file, you have to define a path where you have to create this one. So this is my target file, so I call it as write underscore XML1. So I'm giving the file name as write underscore XML1, or I'll create a new folder, outbound, and I will write it there. So I'll call it as write XML1, and click on save. Now if you look at the structure, it is a bit different from my source or the previous flat file that I used. So previous flat file that I used is like this. It has postal code and address. But if you look at the current flat file, XML file, it has one more additional segment called document details, and it has created by, created date, and created comments. So I have data for this one, but this one and this one I don't have the data. So let us go and handle this. So go to your data store, target data store, expand it, go to your template tables, and you have what? Demo address and demo postal code. Okay, so my bad, I created them in two different data stores. So I have my demo address, my demo postal code, and if you, this additional segment I don't have any source for. So let me hard code that, and to hard code that I need a source for that one. So remember, row generation transformation, whenever there is a no source available, or whenever there is no source table available, you can use the row generation transformation as a dummy source there. Now use a query transformation and link all your source and targets. So by linking your targets, you are giving the schema out in your query transformation. Let's make sure that the path is given, and by linking your target file, you are also populating the schema out. But now the step is to map your schema into the schema out. So first go to the query, make it current, go to the from tab, and no need to have it from all three, just row generation is enough. Then go to the postcode group, make it current, and check the postcode box. Then go to this one, make it current, check the address box, and go to the last segment, make it current, and just let it be mapped to the row generation. Now first thing when you have a nested structure like this is go and map them to their respective schemas, and if you don't have a schema for them in the input, so use a row generation and map it with the row generation. So now go to the first one, make it current, go to the mapping tab and select postcode here and drag and drop it on that postcode. Right, so next one, make it current and map address to address. So remember, first thing that you need to do is that work on the from tab. So go to the from tab, and from each and every segment map its respective counter segments in the schema n, and then you go to the mapping. So without doing the first step, if you do this, you'll get errors or you'll not get the right data for sure. Right, so map address to address, then go to the third segment, make it current, and you hard code this one. So put it in single quotes, created by Rakesh Samuel, created date is my system date, then created comments, demo on XML data. So I'm just hard coding each and every column here under the document details. One is created by, I gave a name, created date, I gave the system date, and created comment, I mentioned it as demo on XML data. Now your mapping is done, but here I just mapped address to address, but I did not use any condition because if I don't use the right condition here, I will not get the right data. So for every postal code, I should get its relevant address. So I go to the Where tab and I say where the postcode ID from my postcode table is equal to the postcode ID from my address table. So if I do that, for SA019TB, the postcode ID is 1, and here if the postcode ID is equal to 1, there are 3 addresses that are available. And for D150LQ, the postcode ID is equal to 2, and here for 2 there are 2 addresses. So the exact data will be populated into your this one. So to ignore row generation. There's no need to do that in the join condition. So though you don't do it in a join condition, it will not throw any errors. So validate this, no errors found. Now select the job, write XML, and execute this one. And once the job is successfully executed, so you will write the data to this XML file. So we created a outbound directory folder here. And this is my XML file. So select the XML file and say open with a notepad, or you can even open that with a web page. Okay, so it's just opening with the notepad, but if you double click on an XML file, it will open with a web page, and there you will see the data highlighted. Now if you look at this one, this is my first postal code, my address 1, address 2, and address 3, and this is my second postal code, and this is my address 1 and address 2, and this is my name, create a date, and the comment that I gave. So this is my XML data. So if you look at this, it starts with a postal code group and ends with a / postal code group. So this is how your XML data. So if you look at this one, address / address, then address / address, and it started with a postal code group and it ends with a / postal code group. Right, so this is how we read the data from 2 database tables and wrote that into an XML file. So that is one more example. Then the next one is a little tricky one. You write the data into a database table, but you write it in an XML format. The data is written into a database table, but whatever the data that you write into a database table is written in an XML format. Right, so this is the job that we're going to build now. So I'll just remove this one because we are going to build it on the same one. So add one more query transformation and call it as add level, because to write it into a database table or to use the built-in function, we need one more level here. So select that one. Generally we copy it from here. Now you copy it from here so that we can add one more level in the nested structure. Just go back, and what next one? Convert to varchar. So you are using a conversion functions to convert the XML data into a varchar string and then write it into a table. Right, connected. So now In this one, we added one extra level. Now go to this one, convert to varchar, and create a new output column. Call it as XML underscore data varchar 1000, and then go to the functions and go to the mapping tab, click on the functions, and here you have the conversion functions. Click on conversion functions, and you have something called as load to XML. One second. So let me just cross check the function. Is that load to XML or what? Yep, load to XML is the function. Select this one and click on next. It will walk you through your wizard. So nested table name. So what is the table name that we are using here? So query is the first node, right? So just click on OK. And DTD schema, which structure is that that your particular nested structure is calling, which is postcode address 2. Right, if you just look at this, this is postcode address 2 structure. So that's the name I'm giving here. And this is the DTD schema, which is your query. And enable validation, keep it to 0. XML, so if you just click on enable validation, you will see validation or validate the output XML based on the given DTD or XML. If it is set to 1, it is enable validation is required. Set to 0, no validation required. So I just set it to 0 to make sure that there is no validation. XML header, it's 2 single quotes. It's not a double quote. You need to give 2 single quotes here, which means null. If something else is coming, you replace that with null in the XML header, and replace null string with a blank space, 2 single quotes. Then set to 1 if the NRDM column is the top level element. So set it to 1, and maximum size is 1026. That's the default size. Right, so again, I'll take you through this. Click on the drop down and go through the query. Then here, select the exact schema into which the data should be written into. Then enable validation 0, XML header 2 single quotes. Then replace null string with 2 single quotes. Is top level element 1, and maximum size is 1026, and click on finish, and you will see load to XML function here. So if you want to modify this in the future, you can select on load to XML, right click and go and do a modify function call, and this one you can see this. So to tell you about the modify function call, so it was there from the version 3.2 of data services. Prior to that, in the version 3.0, this modify function call was not there. And just in case if you have to do any modifications on the function that you've written, you just need to delete that and recreate the function. So that was the case with version 3.0. That can be your interview question. Just to mention, just like if I mention in my resume saying that I've worked in different versions, 3.0, 3.2, 4.0, 4.1, 4.2, then definitely they will ask you the differences. What are the differences between these versions? So from 3.0 to 3.2, maximum bugs were covered. So 3.0 has n number of bugs. So if you are using something like this and you validate, you get an error. So you will have to use a merge transformation, break the link here, use merge in between and connect it, and then revalidate. It will not throw an error. That is one of the biggest bug in version 3.0, merge usage. And that was rectified from version 3.2 along with the modify function call. So 3.0 you don't have a modify function call. So from 3.2 you have this one. So from 3.2 to 4.x, right, the major difference is introduction to central management console. So 4.x, from version 4.x there are architecture level changes, so major changes. That is the reason why you have a jump in the major version, which is 3 to 4. So if it is a minor changes or some small service pack adjustments, it will be changes after the dot. It will be 3.1, 3.2 and so on. But if it is a major change, then it will be architecture change. It will be a jump in the version number from 3.x to 4.x. So some small bugs were there even in the current version. Handling the XML WSDLs is a bug, or handling the web services is a bug. So you cannot do that. Even in my current customer, we are supposed to handle some XML data in that one, but we called off that entire process and converted that to something else because of the bug in the current version. We wrote to SAP, we requested for a note on that one, and SAP came up with a new service pack saying that go and upgrade this to a service pack, so and so, and then you can read this one. But if you go and enable that service pack, something else is missing on the system, right? And also the Excel files. So Excel files, reading the Excel files is a bug in the 4.2 version. So the reason what SAP gives us from version 4.2, it is 64-bit operating system, or 64-bit software on your data services. So if you want your Microsoft Office to be compatible with your data services, so you need to install a 64-bit Microsoft Office package. But the general one that we'll install is a 32-bit. So SAP says you upgrade that to 64-bit, and then you can work on your XML files. So these things, so something like these points, if you mention in the interview, that will really add value to what we say there. First thing is we are gaining the other person's confidence, saying that clear exact differences between the versions, at least like code 1 or 2. So there's no need for you to remember each and everything. Even I don't remember each and everything, but thing is that give 1 or 2 examples which are pretty much valid from version to version, and then what is the major jump between 3.x to 4.x, and within 4.1 to 4.2 or 4.0 to 4.2, what are the different versions that are available and what are the changes, the sub changes. So that will really help us to gain the confidence from the interviewer. So writing back to this job, so select this job, right click and execute, and this job will now go and write the data into a database table, but the data that is written in the database table will be written in an XML format. Now the job is done. Open your data flow, click on the magnifying glass, and now you see the data is written in an XML format. You can right click, select the cell, right click and click on view cell, and expand it. One second. Right, so if you look at this one, it says SS019 TB, flat 1, flat 2, flat 3, D150 LQ, and then it says Eden Hall and the Garden Cottages and created by Rakesh Samuel. system date, and demo and XML data. So whatever the data that I wrote in my XML file in a nested structure, I wrote the same data back into a database table, but the data is written in an XML file structure. Right, so this is how you write the XML data into a database table. So you can get any of the scenarios in the future, but just preparing you for that. So the next step is, how do I read the data from this database table, which is written in an XML format, and write it back into an XML format, right? So data flow read db XML.
Hey Rakesh,
Yeah, Jafar.
I have one question. Uh, how we can handle if we want to create a nested nodes, like for example, when we click on the address, it will show the states, and when we click states, and then it will show the state, and then we can see the postal codes and address. Usually the XML file comes like this, right? So it will not be a straight. So how we can handle?
Yeah, so that is, if I'm answer your question right, so this is how we get the XML structure, nested structure, or to that matter to your iDocs. So they will be in the nested structures, and you have to unnest them so that you can convert them. So this is how we handle the nested structures. Did I get your question right, Zafar? You're asking.
Maybe you're right. Actually, what I'm asking is, for example, when we got the XML file, sometimes it shows the state, right? When you click the state node, it will show you the state names, like for example, Texas, Illinois, and then Florida, right? And when you click on that node, it shows you the address. Like you can see, like a state. These are the states. When you click states node, then it will show you the addresses.
Yeah.
Something like
So
that.
we will have one more additional. So you are here we have two levels of nested structure. So you are saying this parent will have, so let us say this is country, and this country will have the second segment as states, and the second segment states will have something under that as postcodes, and the postcodes will have addresses. So it is a nested structure. So if in case you have that, so first thing is you unnest this one, add it to the schema out, then you unnest this one, add it. So you will unnest all these things, and now once you add it to a flat structure, so first one, country will be repeated 4 times because you have 4 levels here, or based on the data that is present in the last segment. So you'll get it like this. So USA, then USA. So first let us say it is like IL, and then postcode 60001, and from here I go for Lake Forest, right? The second one IL 6002, I go for Mandalene. Then I go for USA IL 6003, and I go for Shamburg, right? So this how it will be converted, but if you look at the XML data, so structure, it will be like country, and under the country you'll have state, under the state you'll have pin, and under the pin you'll have address. So here at this level you will see only
I got it. Yeah, that's the
so
thing I was asking. Yeah.
so if you convert that into a flat structure, this country will repeat. So if let us say in this pin number 6001 I have 2 addresses, So again, next line I'll get 6001 and address 2. Address 1 and address 2. I'll get it that way. Okay, so the next step is to read the data from the database table and write it into an XML file. So that is done using your functions. So extract XML is the function that we'll be using here. Look at this extract XML function. So use a query transformation. Then here I'm not going to create a new output column and map that with a function. I'll talk about the new function call. One more option that we have here is a new function call. We already did that for lookup when we used the data transfer transformation. So new function call, conversion functions. Under conversion you have something called as extract from XML. So this function will help us to extract the structure from or extract the data from the XML and write it as an output. So function returns a value, so select that function, click on next. The field name here is XML data. That one single column has the data, and the structure here is postcode address 2, and enable validation you set that to 0 and just click on next. Now you don't want this error messages and error numbers, you don't want this postcode group and document details. We just need these two. So map them to output and just click on finish, and this function returns the XML postcode address 2 structure, and this data will be written into this structure. So now go and select an XML file. So this is where you can create an XML file. Right under your template table, you'll have something called as template XML. Click on that and click back on the work area and call it as write XML. Connect it with your query transformation and open the write XML and define the path where it has to go and create a file. So I'm calling it as write XML2. Save it. Go back. Validate this one to see if there are any errors. No errors found. Right click and execute. Right, so the job is successfully done. Go to your source folder, and within that you have something called as outbound directory, and you have your write XML2 available, and open that with the notepad, and you see the data. It is SA019TB, flat 1, flat 2, and flat 3, and the second one D150LQ, Eaton Hall, the garden cottages created by Rakesh Samuel, system date, and demo on XML data. Right? So this is how you will read the data from a database table using a function, or let me put it this way. This is how you read the data from a database table where the data is written in an XML format. You read that using a query transformation and a function called extract from XML, and then write it into an XML file structure by creating a template XML file on your tool palette. Alright, so that is one way. So especially for XMLs, because whenever we think of data, so our mind will be fix it to the flat structures. So especially for XMLs, just keep in mind, we need to practice it more number of times, because initial days it went for us like a bouncer. I did not understand a bit of it, but you know I correlated that to the scenarios and tried to work on these documents, which helped me a lot. These two documents. Apart from these two documents, there were no other documents related to XML given by SAP. I'm not sure like in the recent days if something was launched, but right in the days when I started learning this one, we did not have anything apart from these two documents. So kind of learned this one, and learning this one was pretty much helpful for me because in one of the projects with SAP, we had to load the data using iDocs. So handling the iDocs nested structure became easy because I was able to understand this one, the nested structure, and how do I segment this. So even if it is an iDoc here, so you'll have the master segments and the subsegments. So you just need to go and make everything current and do a right mapping and define the join condition between these two, and then you can execute that one. So this is about the document manipulating the XML data. There is one more document called as real-time jobs. So this will talk how do you work on the real-time job, what is testing a real-time job, how do you convert a real-time job into a web service. So when you convert a real-time job, so as per the definition, what is a real-time job? So batch job, you run it once in a day or twice a day. It runs in batches and it moves the data from your source to target. But the definition of a real-time job is whenever you create a real-time job between your source and target tables, and the second there is a transaction on your source table, that transaction should be pushed onto your target table, which means the real-time data as it is done or committed on your source table, that should be pushed onto your target. So it is a continuous running job. So how can a job be continuously running? Not possible, right? So you should convert this real-time job into a service and you can run the service. So services can run. So till the service is running, your job is indirectly running continuously. And that is how we will run a real-time job as a service continuously, so that till that service is up and running, whatever the transactions or what are the changes that happens on your source system will be reflected on your target system. And along with that, you will also have a WSDL, a web service created as a hyperlink from this one. So instead of giving a table and all these things, you will just give a web service to your customer, and he can read it with the tools like REST, SOAP. There are so many tools that read the web services, and even data services is one more tool that reads the web services, right? So what the customer will do is he will process that web service into a flat structure, a table structure. Now the moment there is a change in this source table, those things gets reflected to your target table automatically. And if it is not happening, then we should understand that this service, whatever we ran, went down, and we have to go and correct that or up that service one more time, so that the services so that it will continue the process of the real-time job. So this document also talks about setting up the environment. What are the prerequisites that you should have to make sure your real-time jobs work on your system? So these are the prerequisites. One is your repository must be associated with the web administrator, which is understood that we will create anytime, anyways, when we are creating a local repository. So remember the first session, setting up the system. When we are talking about the local repository creation, so there is one step, which is your fourth step, called add your local repository to the data services or central management console, or register your local repository to the management console. So that is our first step when we are creating a local repository. So this is the first thing that they are asking here. So it should be associated with the web administrator. So this document and is created on 3.x version of data services, probably 3.0. So those days you can register your local repository in that version. So when I say those days, in that version, you can register your local repository in the management console, or you can even ignore that. So it is not a mandatory step, right? So if you want to work on a real-time services, you should register that. But from version 4.x, it is mandatory that you go and register your local repository in the central management console, so that it gets reflected on the data services management console, and you can log into your designer as well. The second step, if you look at this, a job server must be present with an adapter communication enabled. So we did not notice that much when we are creating the job server, but let me show you this one. So the navigation for that is Start, All Programs, Data Services 4.2, and Server Manager. So Server Manager is my tool using which I can work on my job server. Right. So this one point, it refers to multiple events on the system. One is your job server must be present with an adapter communication enabled. So if you look at this one, your job server that you used in your designer is job server underscore 1. So I see the name here, job server underscore 1. If I put my mouse pointer on this one, I'll see the name of the job server here. So you go to this one and click on edit configuration. You select your job server and you see job server port, job server, adapter message communications, broker, and use SSL protocol. Right, so these two should be yes. So how do I set them up to be yes? So select that one and click on edit. And on a system, when you are creating a first job server, so keep this in mind, this is very important. You cannot do this, or you cannot enable this to on the second job server that you create on a system. On the very first job server that you create on the system, you can check these two boxes. Right, if I go and add one more job server, these things will be grayed out. Right, you cannot create that. You can create that only when you are creating the first job server. And remember in mind that whenever you do a first job server, make sure you create them by default. Check them. So even you're just working on your batch jobs, you don't need them, that's fine. You just check them, and the communication port will be 4001. That's the default port. And just click on OK, and you will see these two adapter, support adapter message broker as yes, and use secure SSL protocol as yes, and the communication port will be 400. So this is first step, and second step is the access server must be running and associated to the web administrator. So on the job server, you have a second tab called access server. By default, it will be blank. So you go to the configuration editor and just click on add and browse to some of your local drive. Generally, this will be picked at the time of installation. So if it is not picked, then you go to the configurations path. Right. So this is what I gave here. SAP Business Objects, Data Services, and Configurations. You give that path, and then communication port is 4000. So there SSL 4001, and here it is 4000. So this is the checkbox that enables the access server on your job server. So on top of your job server, sorry, So on top of your job server, you'll have the access server enabled, and just click on OK, and you will see your access server created. So this is the path, this is the communication port, use SSL and enable access server, and just click on OK and OK. Right, so SSL service certificate files. So this is just your certificates, runtime. This is the cache where it is using, right? And these are the port numbers. Start port is 1025 and pen port is 32767. So you can give the port numbers between them. Then native component supportability library. So if you want to enable instrumentation in NCS, you can do that. And in miscellaneous, you'll have something called as sender and receiver. Right, sender, server, and sender. So this is where we need to give the server name. So it is, in our case, it is Bevo41, and sender. So I should register an email, right? So something like this in my network. Right, and I should enable a communication board for this one so that I can send my email notifications through data services. I'll show you that as a part of the project. So how do you do these things? But this is where you set up the server name and the sender's email ID. So just you have to open up the port number 25 for email SMTP communications. So that can be done by your system admin. And once you do that, if you give the server name and the ID from which the mail has to be sent, so the distribution channel, the DC, will get an email from this particular ID if you uh, are running this job. So it will be like ETL underscore sender at org.com. So whatever the organization that you work for, so your email IDs will be generally like this. So just click on close and restart will actually you know, restart the services. I have already enabled them, so that's the reason why I'm not doing that. The next one is it should also be associated with the web administrator. So go to your data services management console with the navigation start all programs 4.2 and data services management console. Go to your administrator and in your administrator on the left hand side you will see all the options that we saw earlier. There are few left that I told you that will cover as a part of your real-time jobs. So one of them is real-time, the second one is web services, adapters, right? And we also have something called as access server. So unless and until you don't enable your access server here, you will not be able to see this real time here. So this will be grayed out. For reference, I can show it to you on other server. Uh, so this server we tried to do that, but there are some issues, so we could not complete this one. Go to your administrator, and under the administrator, on your left hand side, you will not see left hand side you will see the management, and under the management you can see access server. There if you go and configure the access server, there is some communication port issue, so that is the reason why you will not see the real time here. So I'll show it to you. Yep, you don't see real time, you see only the batch, right? So if I expand this one, I go to the access server and I try to create one, right? And if I click on ping, it's not able to communicate because of, okay, now it's working. Right, so I think this guy worked on it, but previously it used to throw an error. So without enabling this one, you will not be able to see the real time here. So there are series of steps that you need to do. One is go to your access server and add an access server. So whatever the parameters that you passed in your job server manager, communication port 4000, right? Just click on ping, right? Access server 4001, BO41 4000 is valid, and once you just click on apply, your access server will be created here, right? So next you need to go and cross check on your adapter instances. So if you just click on this one, right? So adapter configuration. So this is something that gets installed at the time of installation itself, but just in case if it is not done, you click on add, and these are the different adapters like BID adapters. So this is something called as SAP by design adapters, then Hive adapters, HTTP adapters, JMSA adapters, Salesforce, success factors, SAP success factor adapters, test adapters, then VCFA and WSDL, web service adapters. So select your web service adapter and just click on OK, and it will be added to your system. So these are the default settings that you'll get. You just need to give the adapter instance name, the host name, and the server port, and just click on apply, and your adapter will be added. So this is the second thing that you need to check, and once these two things are done, you will be able to see your real time here. So just expand it, or you go to the status tab and just make sure that your real time is in green. So if you do all those basic level settings and still you don't find it here or don't find it enabled, so we need to reach out to our system administrator to enable this one, because there can be different issues at the time of installation. Somebody must have ignored checking this ones, or are not proper service pack selected. So there will be a number of factors, so you can reach out to your system admin and ask him to do a correct setup and enable this thing and give it back to you so that you can start working on the system. This is not even an admin's role, to tell you frankly. This is something that the installation guy should take care of. So from our end, as a developer, admin, architect, the things that we need to cross check is go and check if your access server is enabled here. Go and cross check if your adapters are enabled, right? Here, if it is in case, right, you see that in an orange color, right? You select this one and start the service. So you can start the services whenever you want, or you can shut down or abort them. So you can start services if it is down, and then you go to your real time and you see it enabled. Then you go to your status and cross check if this is present there and it is in green color or not. So these are the basic pre-checks that we need to do as a part of the second document, which is real-time jobs. So Once we are done with all these pre-checks, then we can start working on the real-time jobs, which I'll take it tomorrow. So these are the 3.x version screenshots. So job server used to look a bit different those days in the previous versions, right? So one is SNMP communication enabled. The second one, this is your first start page. But in our current versions, you see the job server a bit different though. Right, so this is our job server in the current version, but this is your server manager in the previous versions. It looks different. So all these tabs are present under one by one. So edit access server configurations, edit SNMP configurations, and then SMTP sender and receiver. Right, so you just click on restart. So same options, but in a different window. You have them here. And once it is done, on the data services management console, adaptive instances, they should be up and running, web service. The second step is your status, real time should be up and running. And the third one, access server is not mentioned in this document, but that has to be configured so that you can start working on that. And once you are done with all these basic level settings and you cross check that they're up and running on system, then the next step is you can go and create your real-time job, test the real-time job, convert a real-time job into web service, run the service, create a WSDL, provoke a WSDL using data services, invoke a WSDL using data services. So read a web service and write a web service. These are the two steps that we'll be doing. And with that, we will conclude on the real-time jobs as well. So this will take some half an hour to complete the entire exercise, the real-time services, and after that, the next step we will see is a little introduction to SAP HANA Studio, the architecture of SAP HANA, introduction to HANA Studio, how do you create the connections, how do you log into them, and then we will see what are the different data provisioning mechanisms. We have SLT, we have DXC, we have boards. So we'll just list down different replication mechanisms or data provisioning mechanisms, and then we will see how do we load data into SAP HANA using boards, and then from log into SAP HANA Studio and see how and where the data is created, right? So, and a few quick options that we got on SAP HANA apart from creating the models. Just how do you view the data, a quick view, how can you run some quick dashboards on your data. So we will see them on SAP HANA Studio. So just an overview on a high level from end to end on a HANA Studio, we'll look at that, but there's still a lot of possibility. Just if I introduce you to the tool, then you can do some R&D, read about it and get to know much detailed options of that one, so that could be helpful. And once it is done, so tomorrow we'll complete this one and this one, and after that day after we'll have the last session where we'll be talking about the project orientations, the AIO methodology for small and medium enterprises, SMEs, then BPDMs and rapid deployment solutions for large enterprises, and then I'll walk you through the project. So which we did not follow any of these RDS or BPDM, so we just followed the small and medium enterprise methodology, AIO, but we did some good steps in that project, so I would like to walk you through that one because that will be helpful. We will also be talking about these documents related to BPDM and RDSs. So my next step is to share you these two documents, and also these two documents are BPDMs and RDS, so that you can go through them by the time we get into these classes, so that will be helpful for you. So for a better understanding on the BPDMs document, I have done some highlights on the document, so you can just look at those look at that document and I mean just keep a note of that highlighted points what I did, so that when I talk about that in the session, that will be pretty much helpful for you to grasp it quickly. So that's it for today. If you have any questions on today's topics that we covered, especially manipulating the XML data in real-time jobs, please go ahead and ask your questions. Uh, any questions from anyone? Yeah, so we are planning to start our next batch pretty soon. Sandeep, there's a question from Sandeep. Are you going to cover the error handling? So yes, we have been looking at it. If I'm not wrong, whenever we got the errors, we covered them, and we also spoke about the root cause and resolution, creating an Excel so that as you practice, you get more errors and you can feed them in that Excel so that in the future you can refer to that. But just in case when you're practicing you get any error, don't hesitate to send me a screenshot so that I can look at it and send you a solution on an email. So most of the times I'll be in some meetings or customer calls when I'm at the office, so I might not be able to attend your calls, but you can send a mail to me and I'll try my best to respond to them at the earliest. Uh, and just in case if you still want that, so tomorrow we can talk about the generic errors that we get, right, as a part of this data services projects and how do we handle them. We can talk about that as well.
Hi Rakesh, you are able to hear me?
Yeah, Sandeep, I can.
Yeah, actually my question is like, see, we can use that try and catch method, right, for this error handling, because my question
Okay,
is like,
try and catch. I will show you in the project orientation. That's
okay,
not much, because the main reason
mm-hmm.
for the try and catch is if you have
Mm-hmm.
any job and you don't want that job to fail, but technically if it fails, the job should show it is successfully completed, but it should trigger an
Exactly,
alert message and it should
yeah,
capture that error message in that one. So I'll walk you
yeah,
through that. So we have a very good scenario
okay,
in my project about that. So that's the reason why I kept it there, parked it
okay.
for that one. So I'll show it to you there.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Rakesh. And
Yeah.
there's one more question, Rakesh. For example, in the source, if there are more than one files and we don't know how many files are going to be there in the directory, means like today if it is 10, tomorrow if it is 20, and all will be having the same metadata. So how we are going to do that in the flat file, yeah, in this?
So here, so they all of them should
Yeah.
have at least the same naming convention. So it could be followed
Correct.
by 1, 2, 3, and 4. So just remove that one and
Correct.
put star, and
Okay.
whatever the file names that starts with this and followed
Mm-hmm.
by some other name can be read by this one directly. You had a
Okay.
wildcard there, just star.
Okay. And we
Like
can do
from
this
all
with
the,
global variable also, right?
sorry?
We can do this with a global variable also, right?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Right, good valid questions. If you have any more questions, please let me know. Or don't hesitate, nothing is a small question or a big question. You can send me an email of your questions. Please send out an email if you uh, think about them a little later. If you have any questions, please send out an email to me so that I can answer back to you on that one. And as this batch is going to end in a couple of days, I'm planning to start one more batch. So just in case, if you have any friends looking out for the training, and if you are satisfied, first, if you are satisfied with this training and you think that it's good for your friends, for you to refer it to your friends, please go and refer, because mostly from next Tuesday morning IST we'll be starting a new batch, so we'll be conducting some demos uh, in the subsequent days this weekend, and we'll be starting a batch at the earliest. So just in case, if you have some of your friends looking out for training, please do refer them, so that they also get benefited, and even I get benefited with that one too. Right, so thanks for joining today, and it's been a wonderful batch and a quite interactive session. I appreciate that, and we'll again catch up tomorrow's session, and we'll complete the real-time jobs, HANA, and the generic errors. Try and catch, we'll talk about that in the project orientation, and then we'll go with the project orientation, where we'll talk about uh, right from the pre-sales call, right? We call that as cold calls we make to the customers. Right from that one, uh, we'll talk about those things to hypercare. Like once development is done, code is deployed, everything is good, then what are the different kind of hypercare activities, the support activities that you get into, and how do you work on CRs and all those things. So we'll talk about that, and we also will talk about different levels, like how a project manager can pitch in, because we have a different level of audience here in this session. So we'll see how a project manager, how and when and where he has to pitch in. As an architect, how and when and where I will pitch in. As a lead, how my lead should pitch in, at which level of this project, what are his responsibilities. A developers, when he will start their work, what are his responsibilities, and as a tester, when he can pitch in, and what are his responsibilities. So we will look at all these levels and their roles and responsibilities, right? So yeah, so this is what we'll be looking at as a part of the training, right? And yeah, thanks for joining today. We'll connect again tomorrow. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.